It's funny, actually, because I give you that because I think it's useful just to know what other people do. Don't you think? You know, it doesn't mean you should do it, but it's just interesting to know what other people do, I think. And I was really interested, if not in his scripts, I was interested in the afters of that, which he's saving 4 months a year. I thought that was okay. So, how people traditionally prepare communication is this. Communications have 3 parts: start, content, and end. All right? Stop me if this is too advanced. So communication has a start and a content and an end. And people normally prepare in the order 1, 2, 3. They prepare the start first, then the content, and then the end. So when you're doing an email, I imagine you write the title, for your information. Then you do the thing, hello, how are you? It's been a while, hope you're well, yada, 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 yada. And then you write the end, lots of love, Andy. Then you have a disclaimer, don't read it and don't sue me. There it might be. Yep. If you do an email, a presentation, maybe you start with slide 1, update, slide 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So people tend to prepare chronologically. Yeah. Now there's 2 challenges with this. This is what everyone does. You'll do this, everyone does this. It's fine, it's what most people do, but it's not the best way to do it. 2 big problems with communicating chronologically. The first one is, if you communicate in the order that you think, then you tend to develop your thinking as you go along, which means you tend to come up with your best points towards the end. Yep, so the last section of a report is the most interesting one often. Yep, or if you're writing a long paragraph, the last line of the paragraph is often the and in conclusion, it's amazing because. So it's often the last thing which is best, because we develop our thinking as we go. Here's a question for you. What happens to an audience's concentration during communication? Goes down. Can anyone think of a problem with building up to your main points as they stop listening? Yeah? So the way we normally communicate, I mean, a great exercise to do. If I was your boss, I would order you to do this, all right? I would order you to do this. It will take you 30 seconds. I would order you to do this. But if it's not your sort of thing, don't do it. And I'm not your boss. I don't even work here. If I did work here, I clearly wouldn't be your boss. But if I was your boss, I would order you to do this. I would order you to print out something you've recently done, or pull it up on the screen, or listen to it, whatever it might be. And I would ask you to firstly highlight or identify all the titles and the top lines of every paragraph. So just the titles and the top lines, because that is where people's eyes go most. That's what people focus on the most. There are people who are listening to something, that's where they listen the most. They listen to the beginning of stuff. So if you were, say, doing this, I don't know, with a highlighter pen, you might highlight all the titles, all the top lines in yellow. If you're listening to it, you might bookmark certain things. And then listen to it or read it again, and this time think, where are my key points in this document? The points that I really wanted to jump out. So again, if you were highlighting those, you'd maybe highlight those in green. So you've got the top line of every paragraph is yellow, and then you highlight the keywords in green. It doesn't take very long. But what you'll quickly find when you do this is you'll quickly find if your main points are coming at the beginning or the end. Yeah? So it's a useful thing to do. When you suddenly realize that when you bookmark it, when you listen to it, or when you read it, all your key points are coming at the end of sections, it makes you realize you're building up to the point. So we just need to flip it around a bit. But there's another challenge with the order of preparing in the order 1, 2, 3, which I want to talk about. If you prepare in this order, you've missed the most important word in communication, which was communication is only effective if it achieves the do. The do. The first step of communicating preparation is start at the end with the do. That's what you've just done in your 2-column table. You start with the do. You put the words please, can you in front of it, and then you've got your last sentence of your thing. So if your do is you want somebody to send you some information, your last sentence is going to be, please can you send me the information? Is that all right? So you start with the end in mind, you start with the action, and you put the word please can you in front of it. There's a guy who asked for my feedback on an email he sent. I remember this as though it's etched. I should shut my eyes and see this email. I'm going to read it out to you. Sort of shut my eyes because I can just picture this email. And when I do this, I want you to think what you would do differently if you were this guy, okay? So he was the director of a team, and he wanted them to send some figures to him. And his email said this, all right? So it had the word figures. That was the title. It was called Figures. And underneath, he wrote in capitals because he was cross. In capitals, he wrote, everyone. Yeah, capitals. What does capitals mean in an email? Shouting, yeah? So everyone. And then new paragraph, still shouting, still in capitals. I am fed up sick, wrote this, with chasing you for your figures. In capitals. Then he went to the next paragraph, and capitals came off. I think he'd calmed. He wrote this. I want our relationship to be that of equals, peers, business partners. He wrote this. New paragraph. But increasingly, I'm finding our relationship is becoming that of parent-child. New paragraph. John. So listen up to this. Figures. Everyone, I'm fed up sick with chasing for your figures. I want us to be partners, peers, blah, blah, blah. But increasingly, I think it's parent-child. John. And he asked for my feedback. You know, you think, I'm going to have to tread carefully. I know feedback's a gift, but I think you might find this brutal. So I said to him, all right, John, well, obviously we have slightly different writing styles. We'll talk about that in a second. But just so I know, the golden rule is it has to achieve the do. What was the do? What did you want them to do when they'd had this email from you? And he goes, well, I wanted them to send the figures. I said, I bet they didn't, did they? And he said, God, you're good. How did I know that they didn't send the figures? He didn't ask them. He didn't ask them. Listen, figures, everyone, I'm fed up sick. I want us to be friends, and you're my children. John. He didn't say send the figures. And so I said, let's rewrite it. Let's do the last paragraph first, John. And he goes, right, okay, I need you to send the figures. I said, don't say need. He goes, but I need them. And I said, yeah, but I'm sure you do, but communication is an audience thing. They're going to read this, and so say, please, can you? He goes, but I need them. I said, yes, I know, but they don't think John needs them. They think, stop shouting at me, John. Say, please. And he could tell he was thinking, this sort of cutting-edge stuff isn't going to work here. So he wrote down, please, can you send me the figures? I said, that's a really good last sentence, John. I like that a lot. Right? And I'll do it 4 weeks on Thursday. And he goes, well, I need it now. I said, well, add that. So he now said, please, can you hit reply and send me your figures? So can you see what's happening to this email's already better? I said, the trouble is they might miss it, John. So can you do a subheading above it? So he put urgent action as a subheading. Underneath, please, can you hit reply and give me your figures? So it's impossible for them to miss. I said, just one thing, John. What are you going to do with their do? He goes, what do you mean? So what are you going to do when they send the figures? He goes, well, I'll put it in the system for them. Say, write that down. So he's now got urgent action. Number one, please can you hit reply and give me the figures? Number two, and then I'll put the figures in the system for you. Now, it's very powerful for other people if you ask them to do something to say what you're going to do when they've done their do. Can you hear that? It's really useful because without that, please can you send me the figures, whatever. Please can you send me the figures and then I'm going to do this is much more likely to work. They understand the chain they're part of. They understand they're ruining everything if you don't do your thing. So don't do the thing. Now, once he said this, there isn't really a great deal else for him to say, really. There's a bit more. We'll talk about that in a second. But imagine if every time you did an email, the first thing you did was you wrote, please can you, and then I will. Now, they'll read that paragraph whenever they read it. If it's at the bottom of the email, they might well read it last. They don't know you wrote it first. So in fact, what I often do is, well, I don't really do it anymore, but when I first wanted to get into the habit of this, I changed my auto-signature. You know when you start doing an email and you open an email up to send your email, at the minute what you're also doing is to say, best regards, whatever. Yeah? Well, why don't you change it to immediate action, subheading, please can you, and then I will, best regards, Andy. Because if you change your auto-signature is better at changing habits than you are. All right? Once you've changed it, the habits change is complete for that forever. Yeah? And you don't have to remember. I know you'll remember tomorrow, but I bet you don't in September. But you change your auto-signature, so please can you do X and then I'll do Y. Now we're going to have a look at this in a lot more detail. You might remember another example I gave you at the beginning of the day, a lady who had 50-odd slides in the deck and it went down to 4. That 50-slide deck was originally called Global Reputation Management. Oh, you'd be running to that, wouldn't you? Her final slide was thank you. Now we all know, final slide of thank you, what did the audience say? No, you're welcome, now out. Yeah? So I said, what do you want them to do afterwards? She said, well, I want them to really understand reputation management. And I said, understanding is green head. What do you want them to do? So, well, I just want them to really get how important it is. I said, get is another word for understand. What do you want them to do? Well, I just want them to, improve reputation. So, well, that's not an action. That's a lovely thought. Like, what can they do? Give me some easy actions. And so she said, look, I just want them to ring up a stakeholder and ask a couple of questions. So her final slide was immediate actions. Number 1, please can you ring up a stakeholder? Number 2, ask them this question. Number 3, tell me what they say. Number 4, and then I will aggregate everything, do this, da-da-da. That was the final slide. So she started off by thinking she was educating the world, green head, about global reputation management. I'd tell you 2 things about that. It's 50 slides long and it's utterly dull. Yeah? Now she realised all she wanted was people just to ring up their mate and ask a question. That was 4 slides. You might not be able to save yourself 4 months a year, but I bet you can save a bit of time. So please can I ask you to think of a communication, maybe one of the 5 you already got on your table. Think of a communication, and can you please write down for me how you're going to end it? So word for word, how you're going to end it. Maybe you're going to say, please can you, and then I will. No, you might say, how do you think we should develop this? I thought X. What do you think? I don't mind. So have a chat with your neighbour if you want, or if, I mean this nicely, if you're fed up sick with your neighbour, then work on your own. Yeah? And just write down word for word what's going to come out of your email or out of your mouth to get them to do the do. Okay, ladies and gents, let's want to just explore this a little bit more. We're getting into the real, what's a good way to put this? Dead useful streetwise stuff here, okay? Because the key thing with communication is if you know what to say when it matters, if you've thought what to say when it matters, if you've scripted it like you have just done, the odds of you getting it right when it matters are pretty good if you've thought about it. But as I said before, when I made that first serve analogy, how often, hand on heart, do you prepare your opening sentence to a meeting? Never. All right? Just doesn't happen. All right? You might, nobody else does. So how often do you prepare? Nobody does. And that's why these things just don't start off in the right way. But once you know that of all the sentences I'm going to say, the first one is really pivotal, then why wouldn't you practice it? It doesn't take long. You'll walk into the meeting anyway. Just say it out loud on the way to the meeting. It's just not extra time. But the other sentence to work on is how you're going to close it, which is what you've just been doing now. Because if you open and close things well, you have a much greater chance of success. I was struggling a couple of years ago to get my daughter to go to bed. So I realised that she's quite competitive, is Maya. So I will now say things like, right, Maya, race time. And I haven't said anything else and she's already going, what? Yeah? And our house is weird. It's got 2 staircases. So like, right, it's a race upstairs and the first one to touch the bathroom handle wins. Which staircase do you want? She'll go, this one, bam, she's up. Yeah? What am I really saying? Bed. So all it is, I spent ages and ages thinking what's... So also what does she like? She likes reading. So I now say, you know your favourite story. It's time for your favourite story upstairs. Which staircase going up? Yeah. So it just takes a while to... And it really, 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 really matters to me that she feels loved and special and cherished and cared and just utterly worshipped by her father in every way. And so I wanted to spend time getting this sentence right. I didn't want to do the... Just get upstairs. Like, you can pull rank if you want to with a 6, 7-year-old, but I don't want to be like that. I want it to think I'm ace. So it's important. So I spent a disproportionate amount of time thinking about this sentence because it matters. Yeah. So in communication, corporate land, the very first sentence and the very last sentence are the two pivotal ones. If you don't start well, people don't engage. If you don't end well, people don't do anything. So this idea of scripting I find very useful. Sometimes people don't like scripts. They think I'd rather just fly by the seat of my pants, in which case that's fine. It's less likely to work though. Let me give you an example. So this is an example of how I close meetings. So this is just another example of how I make sure that do's happen at the end of all my meetings. Now, again, if you like these words, copy them down, use them, that's great. You have these slides, we'll send them out to you and all that sort of stuff. But if you don't like these words, choose your own. But know how you're going to finish your meeting. You've actually done some scripting there. It's cool and it's helpful. Yeah? So this is what I do. If I'm in a meeting which is supposed to finish at 12 o'clock, it's about 11:45, so 15 minutes before the end, I begin to close it down. I don't do any of this 11:59, we're about to run out of time stuff. 15 minutes early, the phrase I use is, I'm conscious of time. I have a lot of evidence what happens when I say I'm conscious of time, because I say it every single meeting. What do you think happens when you say to someone, I'm conscious of time? What do, do you think? Yeah, well done, they look at the watch. And the other thing they do is when they look at the watch, they stop talking to look at the watch. So me saying I'm conscious of time bridges from the chat to the close. Now, if you don't like that, say someone else. Oh, just one quick question. They'll go, what is it? Quick pause, and you're into the close. So I don't care what it is, but you've got to know how to stop the chat, because if you don't know how to stop the chat, what will happen? Doesn't stop. So I say I'm conscious of time. And then say, so my understanding is that we've agreed X during this meeting. Have I got that right? Now again, I'm not saying use my words, I'm saying know your words, but if you like these, that's a shortcut for you. You can just... So my understanding is we've agreed X, Y, Z. Have I got that right? They will either say yes you have or no you haven't. If they say yes you have, I say, I'm glad I checked. If they say no you haven't, what do you think I say? I'm glad I checked. What do you think? So 15 minutes to go, I'm conscious of time. Look at the watch. Okay, so I guess the last thing to do before we wrap up is just to make sure we're clear on the actions. So my understanding is we've agreed X, Y, Z. Have I got that right? Oh, well, no, I thought it was this. I'm glad I checked. Anything else I missed? I don't care. Just let's make sure we agree. And then I go into the do. So to progress this, and then I make sure that we got actions. What are you going to do? What am I going to do? What shall we do? I use the word do. I quite like us both to have actions because I'm into this bring a bottle thing. I don't want to have all the actions. That makes me their subservient, deferential. Yeah? But I don't want them to have all the actions. That's not fair either. So I quite like it if we both got at least one action. So I might say, so what are you going to do next? What shall I do next? And then if it's someone you want to meet with again, then I might say, when should we next meet? Let's get it in the diary, our next meeting now, before we leave. Otherwise, it's going to be email tennis sorting it out, and that's just rubbish. If you ever say the word email tennis to anybody, they go, oh, yeah, I hate that. But you can sort that out. So let's not have email tennis. Let's just get the next meeting in the diary before we leave. And depending, I might then finish with, and who else needs to come to the next meeting? Do we need anybody else there, or are we good? So I've said lots of things. I'm just going to read out what it says on the slide. The core base are, I'm conscious of time. I then say, my understanding is we've agreed X. Yes, is that right? I then say, so to progress this, out come the do's. When and my next meeting? Who else do we need to bring? I don't always do all those, but that's kind of my thing. Because you know something that's really good? Person number 23 I've met with doesn't know how I finished the meeting with person number 22. I don't think they get together in a little cloakroom and say, you know that meeting with Andy Bounds you had last Wednesday, how did he finish it? You know what I mean? They don't get together, trust me, they don't get together about this. So, if you don't like those phrases, what do we say? We start with the bridge. We need to shut the meeting up and go into the do. It's always worth saying, my understanding is that we're here. Is that what you think? Glad I asked. All right, cool. So what are the next steps? When should we next meet? Bye. If you start doing that at 11:45, I tend to find this only takes about 5 minutes, which means you've got 10 minutes you weren't expecting. You know, sometimes when you look at your diary and think, and when exactly am I supposed to have a wee? These back-to-back meetings. Oh, and actually, that meeting finishes at 11, that one starts at 11, and they're on different sides of the building. So I'm hoping sometime in the next 2 hours I'll learn how to teleport, because it's the only way to be able to do this. Final thing I want you to talk about before we go for lunch. And if you can all eat as much as you can, and then you can have a sleep in the graveyard shift this afternoon. I thought a couple of persuasion techniques would be useful. So the final thing I'm putting on the slide here is if you want to persuade someone, if you want someone to do what you want, this is good for getting kids to go to bed. I always think of the letters B-O. B-O doesn't mean what it normally stands for. B-O is a great way to get someone to do what you want. B-O stands for benefit and options. If you want someone to say yes, give them the benefit of saying yes and then options. So at the minute you've written down your lovely, please can you do X? So John's thing was, please can you send me the figures, and I'll put it in the system. And that might be enough. But you might need to use a bit of BO. What BO is this. Benefit, so I said to Maya, it's time for your favourite story. That's the benefit. She loves stories. It's time for your favourite story. Upstairs. Options. Which staircase are you going up? Or I might do, it's time for your favourite story upstairs. Do you want to go now or in 5 minutes? I don't mind. You sound so lovely, but what are you saying? Bed. You could go and knock on your boss's door and say, boss, have you got 5 minutes now? Yes or no? What might they say? No. Let's say, Maya, do you want to go to bed? Yes or no? Yeah, don't give them no as a choice. Give them 2 yeses. You could go to your boss and say, boss, I'm looking to see if we can save a bit of time as a team. Bosses love stuff like that. That's a benefit. So I could do with having a quick 5 minutes with you. You've got 5 minutes now? Do you want me to pop back in half an hour? I don't mind. Sound lovely. What are you really saying? You see me? We did one of these before. I gave you an exercise to do, and so we're going to have a quick break. How long do you need to go on the thing and do that, like liquid in, liquid out? 15 minutes, 20 minutes? It sounds so lovely, but what am I saying? Back at 5 past. And when you're on the receiving end of it, it sounds fine. So if you have a look at your please can you sentence, if you think it's a perfectly fair request and they'll probably do it, no need to change it. But if you think, I'm not quite sure they will want to do this, add a bit of BO. And the way you add a bit of BO is you think, well, I've said, please can you do this? This is the non-negotiable. I want them to do this. So what's the benefit to them? So you might say something like, let's just get this off our desks. Benefit. Please can you do da-da-da. When do you think you might be able to do that? Have you got time today, or would tomorrow be better? My favourite email I've ever had from someone, I just want to leave you with this because it's one of the first emails, first email I've had for ages where I nearly cried when I read it. I thought it was so beautiful. There was a lady who wrote, she was a person like you guys, on the receiving end of a bit of a ranty session to 150, 200 people. And she said, I really latched onto this BO thing. And she said, and in her email, she said, I've got 3 children, and the middle one, who's 10, is very autistic. And we have big problems getting her dressed in time so she can leave for school and everybody else is. Right. And so I listened to what he said about this BO thing, and I went home, and every single day she's late. The other 2 children are beginning to resent the attention that this girl gets. And he said, we just don't know how to do it. He said, I'm always late to work. I'm always in tears. There's stress in our family. My husband and I, when we get up in the morning, the first thing we think is, here we go. And it's been like, and she's 10 this year. Now 10 isn't a very big number, but if you think of that in days, that's like 3,000 days. This is a long time. And she said in the thing, she said, I used your BO thing. And she said, and now she gets dressed. She's first dressed. And she said, and I can't tell you what a difference this makes to our life. And when I read it, I thought, oh, that's why I do my job. You know? So this BO stuff, I mean, I make a joke about it. I call it BO. It's dead memorable because of body odor and so on. But it's really important. If you can find the benefit to the other person in a way that they will find resonates with them, and give them a couple of options as to how they can do it, it's pretty useful. So I'm sure you're probably getting quite hungry and you'll want to fill your tummies up and have a bit of food, a bit of drink. Obviously, we all like things like that. But obviously, we've got lots of things to do before we finish at 4 o'clock today. So I guess the question is over lunch, how long would you like for your lunch? We could have 40 minutes, we could have 45 minutes. I'm fairly relaxed, really. It's your day, not mine. 2 hours, yeah, that's the only thing, right? You can get out. But it's funny, actually, because when you give people options of, say, 40, 45 minutes, it's very rare in real life, outside this room, for someone to say something like 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. Once you've given the options, this is the parameters we're working within. So if I say to my teenage son, like, obviously, you're going to have to tidy your bedroom at some point before Gran and Grandad come at the weekend. You don't have to do it now. Just tell me when you're going to do it. I don't care. Just tell me when you're going to do it. He's not going to say, 4 weeks on Thursday, because you've already set the parameters. Yeah?